Welcome to our latest podcast. I'd like to welcome Victoria Roberts. Victoria is Sales Director of the Medical Division at Dräger Medical UK and Ireland Limited. Over to you, Victoria, to give us a bit more of a detailed introduction.
Afternoon, Steve, and thank you so much for having me. So yeah, my name is Victoria, as Steve said. I have been working at Dräger for 2.5 years, and previous to that worked for Baxter Healthcare. I originally came into the industry as a nurse 24 years ago now. So had trained as a registered general nurse and then moved into the paediatric setting. Always worked in critical care, intensive care areas, and for me the patient care piece has always been at the heart of everything that I've done, and I've been very fortunate enough to carry that through in all the roles that I've done across the both companies that I've worked for. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an understanding as to my background, but here we are today.
Lovely. Well, thank you. And I've got a whole bunch of questions that I want to ask you, but that's quite an interesting and varied journey, isn't it? Starting as a nurse and then now you're a sales director of a major medical organisation.
Yeah, I sort of often ask myself, well, how did I actually end up getting there? But I think when I first joined Baxter, I was a clinical specialist, and I guess just by way of really understanding the customer need, because I had been a customer, it enabled me to, provide solutions that were necessary to enable that customer to treat their patients in the most optimal way. And I guess one of the sales managers at the time could see something in me and said, you know what, I'm going to pluck you out of that and pop you into sales because I think you'd be successful. So it wasn't really something that I'd ever mapped out or planned as a career pathway, but once I started my journey as a sales specialist and then account manager and so on and so forth, I really did enjoy it. And the thing I enjoyed most about it was meeting customers who were really trying to make a difference to patients. So the fact that I was selling products along the journey in the beginning was almost a nice to have. I felt very passionate about making a difference to patient care still. But now as a sales director, yes, I am probably a much different animal to that one that started out 25 years ago. And I've got a huge amount of knowledge and experience that I didn't have back then. And I've really enjoyed a really successful career in many different roles across the industry. So I feel very fortunate that I was given this opportunity in the beginning and to be where I am today.
Very good, thank you. And just remind me, how long were you at Baxter Healthcare?
21 years in total.
Okay, so this was a step into another organisation.
Yep.
And you've been in the new role for 2 years now. So, what were some of the challenges that you faced coming in as a new sales director into a brand new organisation?
Yeah, it's interesting, and just thinking about that sort of 21-year career journey, you sort of become a little bit institutionalized, I think, maybe a bit like I was within the NHS, and you have a perception that, well, surely we're in the same industry, so all companies are going to work in the same or a similar type of way. And actually, I guess that was the biggest challenge for me, was just accepting that that's not the case. Companies have different structures, they have different objectives, they work in different areas, and so therefore the way in which they work is very different. So one of the first challenges was really just about getting to grips with the ways of working in a German organization versus what was and what still is an American organization. The second thing was, I mean, I guess in my roles at Baxter, you almost become part of the furniture. You know everybody and everybody knows you, and you step out of that into a new organization where you're unknown and you don't know anyone. So that, I guess, comfort blanket network of individuals that you've developed and nurtured over a very, very long time instantly overnight falls away, and you have to start from scratch and build that up. So actually, having said that, Draeger is a family run firm. And that's how it feels. You feel like you are part of something extremely special. And all the people that I work with and have worked with over the last couple of years have welcomed me and made me feel very welcome. And everybody just wanted to help and support this new sales director coming in. And, you know, on the whole, most people were intrigued as to what I was going to be able to offer that the previous person hadn't. So yeah, albeit it was a challenge, and still is a challenge, because it takes a long time to nurture and develop those relationships. I feel like, you know, 2 years in, yeah, not comfortable slippers on at all, but you know, in a much better place in terms of the people, the ways of working, and the culture.
Very good, thanks you. So you've got to deal with a different structure, you've got a different culture, and you have no history. For good
No.
or for bad, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah.
in the new organization.
Yeah, for sure.
And did you arrive in the role with a plan on how you would drive performance in the business? And if so, did that change as you've kind of settled into the company over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I think through the recruitment process, I started to gain a understanding of what needed to be done and where Draeger was at and what their aspirations were for the future. And so yeah, in my mind, I'd sort of developed, I guess, a bit of a sketched plan, but I think it's not really till you get into the organization and you overcome some of these challenges, such as, you know, getting known and people to get to know you and understand the ways of working, and I guess the processes, the systems that are used within the organization, that you can really sort of then figure out how realistic is it that the plan that I had in my mind, or that I'd sketched out, is going to be implemented. I mean, on the whole, I think we have been, and I say we because it's not just me, there's a number of people that have been involved in executing what has been a huge transformation over the last 24 months. Um, it, but we have had to be very agile in terms of changing some of the aspects of what I believed to be right, and would benefit the organisation, in line with maybe, you know, the people, the culture, the ways of working, the systems even, has been one of the biggest barriers to overcome. The systems are very different to the systems that I was used to. So yes, I think I could hand on heart say that, you know, 60-70% of the original plan was still very much being in place, but there has been some manipulation of it over the course of the last 24 months as well.
Yeah, the plan has to be flexible, right? To
Absolutely.
adapt. Um,
Yeah.
and we spoke a little about the culture and, you know, the different culture between maybe a US and a German-based company. Were there some significant cultural differences, and what impact did those have?
Yeah, I mean, I think just by way of you saying that, you know, one's an American company and has a particular way of working, and doing things, and engaging with the workforce, and another is a German company, family run, and very different. So you have shareholder American, you have family run German. Just by way of that, there are cultural differences. But I think in terms of the heartbeat of the cultural levers, they're very similar, very, very similar indeed. So if you look at things like, you know, customer satisfaction, patient-centered approach, driving results, great place to work, they are in the heartbeat of both of the companies that I've been at. I guess the difference for me has been how those cultural levers become part of the DNA of the organization. And 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 for me, I think we're really working hard on making sure that the cultural levers in Draeger become part of the DNA to enable the workforce to almost attach themselves to them and give them that purpose and that reason as to why they're there. And I think what comes with that, and certainly what we've seen over the last sort of 18 months, is people start to almost come out of their shells. They start to have this real purpose and sense of value, versus just rocking up to work and doing the job that they're paid to do. So for me, in both organizations, these cultural levers are there. The way in which they were part of the DNA of the organization was different, but so long as you've got the right leadership team in place that believe that those are vitally important to the employees and the culture, and actually then outwardly to our customers, that you can sort of see what that organization's DNA makeup it is and how it breathes, that gives me that level of comfort to know that any organization can have a culture. It's how it's really embedded and adopted by the employees within it that's the important piece. Anyone can write a cultural lever presentation and send it out to their employees, and it may go in the inbox and never be read, but it's how you make it part of that organization that's important.
Was there anything that surprised you when you joined Draeger?
Surprised me in what way?
Obviously, 21 years you said at Baxter. You know, you're institutionalized to a point, and then you join a new organization, which I'm sure did some things in a different way. You know, was there anything that sort of sticks out in your mind when you joined that's like, oh, that's surprising?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is the turnover of staff was incredibly low. I mean, a lot of the employees at Dräger, and I think this, you know, comes from its heritage of being a family-run firm. A lot of employees, you know, well, talk about the sales force, had been there for 15, 20, 25, 30 years in some instances, and had deep and meaningful relationships with customers. So yeah, I guess I hadn't been used to that. The turnover in the other company was much higher, and I think there's advantages and disadvantages to both. I think you have that deep level of understanding of the organisation, of the products, of the customer relationship, but then it doesn't necessarily bring the diverse thinking in. I think you maybe can come, especially when you're trying to transform from you know, what one way of selling to another. I think it's sort of maybe difficult to adopt that change when you've got people who've been used to working for a very long time in a certain way. So that I guess shock is probably too much of a, you know, it didn't shock me. It just, yeah, it surprised me that that there was such a tenure of employment, and that's not just in sales, that was across the entire organization. So I guess one of the things that we're very focused on within the leadership team is really looking at diversity and inclusion, and how we can, you know, cast that net wider to pools of candidates that may not ordinarily have applied for a sales role or a role in service, to start to breathe a bit more life into the organization around that diversity and inclusion piece. So yeah, we've been very fortunate in the last couple of years to recruit some superb salespeople from different backgrounds, different organizations, and they're really starting to regenerate and support this transformation moving forward, which has been great.
Very good, thank you. I know you've led different sales teams across different organizations. Are there any challenges that you see as consistent across all sales team, and how do you personally go about overcoming those?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So there's many different challenges over many different teams, right? But I think if I was to nail it to three, my top three, the first one would be stakeholder management. I think that for two reasons, we become sort of a bit complacent as to who we involve ourselves with through the sales process. And we like to talk to people that like us. and we like to talk to one person that likes us. And what do I mean by that? So, historically, you may have had one particular stakeholder that was the key decision maker, and those were the people that you would focus on, and they would get the job done, and you didn't need to communicate or network with anybody else. And I think some of that still exists today. However, I think, post-COVID, the landscape has changed. The way in which our customers buy from us is changing. The needs and the demands on the healthcare service is most definitely changed, and the individuals that need to be involved in the process of introduction of new equipment or new therapies has absolutely changed. Looking just at digital technologies, for example, we're starting to engage with people from IT that we ordinarily wouldn't have had any contact with previously. So I think one of the challenges for the sales organizations, and hopefully, sales managers listening to the podcast will resonate with this, is how do you ensure that a salesperson maximizes the influence within an account that they're responsible for, and networks and understands the roles and responsibilities of each of the individuals and how they can influence or decision make on a particular deal. And I think the way of overcoming that is, first of all, profiling the customers that are responsible for supporting the introduction of the products that you're trying to sell, and maybe not missing anybody out either as part of that profile, and educating the salespeople as to why it's important to go and see those individuals, so they almost can then start to build their confidence around what they should expect when they start to engage with those types of people. So I think knowledge is power in the regard that, maybe they don't know what they don't know. So we have to, go some way towards supporting that stakeholder mapping, stakeholder management piece. And then secondly, the biggest thing for me, and how passionate I am about coaching, is going out there and supporting those guys, building their confidence and competence levels in front of people that they perhaps haven't seen before, and giving them feedback on the next time what you could do differently, or how you could change your approach, or giving positive reinforced feedback on what really went well, just to build that confidence that actually, yes, I can go and speak to people in IT, or I can go and see physios, or I can go and see people that I maybe historically have not needed to before. So I think that would be number one. Number two is the variance of performance between individuals within a sales organization, and how we sort of try to make training programs and development programs very generic in sales. I think this is a big challenge that we have to overcome. So I think, every individual in a sales organization has individual needs for their development, for behavioral expectations and attitudes, for competence and confidence, working in environments that may be unfamiliar to them. So how you overcome that variance of skill set to allow the individual to become the best possible version of themselves is to individualize a development plan, and make sure that you're not just throwing generic training and education, whether that be sales training and education or product training and education, at that individual. And that again, you go out and you support that individual in the field, and you coach them and you develop them personally, and you build up that one-to-one personal relationship with them. And then finally, and I'll pause after I've said this, CRM. So yeah, I think hopefully your listeners will also, concur with the fact that the CRM tool is probably the most valuable and powerful tool that any organization can have. It gives you so much data and insight into your customer, their behavior, their buying pattern, their likes, their dislikes, the opportunities, so much data. but do we use it effectively? No. And why is this? I've tried to think around the psychology that goes through a salesperson's mind when we talk to them about launching a new module within the CRM system. Field-based, time, accessibility, admin burden, all of these things, crop up. So we need to be able to find a way in which to allow us to overcome this problem of effective use of CRM and the data and the reports that we get out of it. We need to be able to find a way in which the salesperson sees the value in the information that they're putting in. And we've made real headway in Dräger with our CRM system in the last 12, 18 months. We've got 2 guys working in the business that are absolute experts, and really not just experts in the system, but pulling the data out, analysing it for the better good of the salesperson. So we've started to get some real traction now in terms of the buy-in from the sales organization, because they can really see, okay, if I enter this information, then this is the information that I'm going to get out, and that tells me that I need to do A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. So I think that's a way of overcoming it, is by showing the salespeople the value of the information that they put in, how it's used, where it's used, and how it can benefit them. So those would be my top 3.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, CRM, very interesting when you said, I hope your listeners would see the value of CRM. I think they probably have a similar experience to you, many of them, which is maybe the word is the potential value of CRM.
Yes.
And how do you tap into that potential more effectively?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I think you have to have CRM experts that it's their job to, use the data in CRM, analyze the data, present the data. So I currently am the UK Ireland sponsor for one of our strategic initiatives, which is embedding CRM not just around sales, but across the entire organization. So looking, we have a huge amount of service engineers that go out and service our kit. I mean, the information that those guys have on a day-to-day basis from our customers is huge. So that's all captured in CRM, and it's finding a way of extracting that out for the benefit of the organization and ultimately the customer. So but I think you have to have that expertise within your organization, and if you don't, you're probably never going to be that successful. So a commercial excellence team looking at the CRM system is really, really vitally important. And then a good training person as well.
Good training person, yes, indeed. What would your top tips be for any sales leader that's joining a new company?
So I think, the first one is be seen, be available, be present, listen, engage. I've had it both ways, where I've had, sales leaders who've been very present out in the field, out with customers. And I've also had people that haven't contacted me on a, ongoing basis for a long period of time, and you feel very alone, and am I doing the right thing? So I think sales leaders need to be seen, and, I love nothing more than people. That's why I do the job I do. So I love getting to know what makes a salesperson tick, what are their likes, what are their dislikes. But I also really enjoy getting back out into the customer environment, because I think it really grounds you. And I think, most of my role is strategic development. And if I'm sitting in the office on Teams calls or Zoom calls, and I'm not spending that time really understanding that customer environment and the challenges that the salespeople are facing, or the successes that the salespeople are facing, and experiencing that real life myself, I'm just hearing anecdotal data from my team. It's not enough. I think going out and being there and being present enables you to develop the relationship with the sales team, but also builds that level of trust that, when you are making decisions and changes, they go, I get that, because I know who she is, and I know where she's coming from. I think also being new, I've had to show a side of vulnerability. I think it's important to, yes, we're given the privilege of being a leader, but that doesn't mean you're the finished article in absolutely everything and that you know absolutely everything. So I think, being a bit vulnerable and showing a level of vulnerability to the organization or to your sales team or to your sales managers even is important, because we're just all human at the end of the day. Yeah, so showing some vulnerability. And then finally, I think, if you are going to make any changes, make sure that you consult with people about these changes. I mean, fundamentally, you might still need to make the change that is unpopular, but consulting with individuals around how they feel about it, what other considerations could there be, is very important, not just to get their buy-in, but to make people feel that they were part of that change. So yeah, and I've obviously, in the past learned lessons the hard way, but I've learned the lessons and changed the way in which I manage change now, which I think is good. So those would be my top tips.
Top tips. Well, and this probably leads us nicely into our last question, which is, can you sum up this could be a big answer, I don't know. Can you sum up what you've learned in your career so far about how best to drive team performance? And are there any additional words of wisdom that you could share?
So I guess if I was to think of two pieces of advice that were once given to me, the first one was chase success, not money. And what do I mean by that? If you just believe that the short-term win of an opportunity is all you're going after every single time, then eventually you may win, you may lose. So chasing success is all around that account management. So it's building that deeper, meaningful relationship with that customer, having a partnership with that customer that's going to last a long time, so that you become a reliable supplier, not just supplier, but partner in the care of that patient or in the continuation of that customer relationship. So chase success, not money, would be one piece of advice that was given to me by a good friend of mine a long time ago. And then in my very early career, I was given a bit of advice by one of my managers who I liked very much, who said, treat your target and your sales versus target as your own bank account and always be in the black. And I thought to myself at the time, wow, that's quite hard, especially when you step out in January and you've got that full year ahead of you. But I think those two things combined together really lend themselves to enable a salesperson to think about putting a plan together for how am I going to stay in the black and how am I going to chase success. And I think that in itself would hopefully aid people in terms of their performance if they keep certain things that resonate with those at the forefront of their minds. And those two things certainly did with me.
Well, I've definitely been overdrawn myself in my sales career at times, so I think it's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, for sure. I don't remember too many times that I was overdrawn, but yeah, when the chips are down, it doesn't feel great, does it? And all anybody is in a sales role wants to do is make the customer happy, achieve results for their organization, and work collaboratively with the people. And if you've got all of those three things right, then you're on fire. You're having a great time, and being in a role that's enjoyable as well as successful gives a different type of energy and feeling inside of how you feel about being at work. It's when the chips are down and you're in the red, it's not great, is it? But if it's
No.
it's all rosy and you're above your target, then you're flying high, and yeah, I've been in both of those situations, and I know which one I'd rather be in.
Well, Victoria, thank you. There's some really great insights that you've shared with us answering those questions. I do have a few quick-fire questions for you before we finish.
Okay.
If that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So what advice would you give somebody just starting out in a sales leadership role?
So get a coach or a mentor. Really, really important. I've always had a mentor in my management career since I stepped out into my first management role. And actually, I didn't wait for people to come to me and offer it. I find them myself. I find people who are going to give me a lever up or walk with me or support me or listen to me. So get a coach or a mentor. I think it's really important, especially if you're just starting out as a sales manager. There are, the network of LinkedIn is absolutely huge, and I think that it's a really good tool to be able to use to help you find the right mentor for you or the right coach for you. Don't be afraid to fail. It's okay. It's all right. I'd rather somebody tried something and it didn't work than them not try it at all and it potentially being a loss of a huge success. So don't be afraid to fail. But if it does fail, learn from it and don't do it again. I already said this earlier, but showing that level of vulnerability when you step into a new role, you've got the job, brilliant, but that's the start of your new journey. You don't have to prove to be that finished article on day one. You're not. The organization will accept that, and hopefully if you're in a good organization, they will give you that good onboarding and induction and probationary period to find your feet. So ask the daft questions, be vulnerable, ask for help. Yeah, and I guess that would be my bit of advice for somebody new starting out their first sales management role.
Very good. Well, look, I agree with all of those, and I could really emphasize how important it is to have a coach, as I am a coach.
You were my coach.
Yes, indeed, for a period of time.
Very good one.
I think it's very kind. Otherwise, you wouldn't have done the podcast, right?
That's very true.
Second quick-fire question. What's your favorite sales book, blog, or podcast, or other?
Okay, I mean, it's not a sales book necessarily. So recently I've been listening to Stephen Bartlett, The Diary of the CEO.
Oh, yeah.
Actually over last weekend, I listened to two, and one that really stood out to me was Jimmy Carr. Now, this is a guy that you see on telly and you have a perception that he's just, a guy that jokes around and is quite rude and vulgar. Actually, I would urge anybody to listen to it. It's free on Apple TV if you've got it. I'm sure other platforms are available. I'm not promoting Apple TV. But he walked through a deep understanding of his experience of becoming a comedian. And he actually started out as a marketing manager, which I never knew. He went to Cambridge University. Really, really impressive story and backstory, but gave some, for me, it really sparked interest in some of the things that he was saying around, how he goes about making people laugh and why that's important to him and why laughter is important, and how he can sort of relate to that in the business sense. So yeah, I really enjoy podcasts and listening to those Diary of the Sea. I do pick and choose which ones I want to listen to. Some of them annoy me, but yeah, that was one that really stuck out for me recently.
Very good, thank you. Well, I think we've got access to more information than we've ever had, haven't we? So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Third quickfire question. What do you believe are the three most important attributes to be a successful salesperson?
Three most important attributes. Hunger is the first one. You've got to be hungry. And I think what comes with that attribute is this relentless drive to be successful. And to not take no for an answer. So that's all wrapped into one attribute, actually. But I think that, having that fire in your belly, that hunger to win, to be successful, then means that the person just knocks on doors, goes out, talks to anyone, and doesn't take no for an answer. The second one is you need to like being around people. If you don't like people, don't go into sales. You've got to really like people, and you've got to be okay with a bit of rejection, because there's a lot of that. So yeah, I guess if you get offended easily, or you don't like being around people, you're not a people person, then the sales career is probably not for you. And then finally, I think your ability to learn, and not just learn, but understand and apply that knowledge into the environment that you're working is really, really important. And we've recruited, as I said earlier, some sales guys that are so hugely impressive in their capability of learning quickly, applying that knowledge, executing that knowledge. Really, really impressive. So I would say that that's quite a high up on my list of attributes for salespeople.
Thank you. You may have answered this earlier, but let's see if you've got the same answer as a quick fire question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given in sales?
I think I did answer it. I think the bit around chase success, not money, and treat your SVT as your bank account. So yeah, I wouldn't expand on that any further.
Thank you. Final question. What is the poor sales habit that niggles you the most?
Emailing.
Emailing. Go on, expand.
Emailing. So we went through a phase, and I don't know which generation it was, I lose track, of individuals that would go, well, I sent them an email and they've not responded. Okay, so have you been to see the individual? Have you got in your car? Have you made a phone call? I think maybe it's not a generational thing. Maybe it's the way in which the evolution of technology has changed, but we're never, people buy from people. And if you're not in front of them, building and developing a relationship, sending an email is going to get you nowhere. So it doesn't exist in my organization, fortunately, but I have seen those bad habits, and it frustrates me, because would you buy from somebody that just dropped you an email? No. So why should we expect our customers to do so? Just sending an email and waiting for a response when we're working in an environment of the NHS, and customers, well, we've seen on the news and in our daily lives what pressures they're under. We have to treat them with the respect that they deserve. So dropping an email in some scenarios may have a place, but relying on that to bring sales in doesn't have a place at all.
Yeah, I don't think we can pin all the blame on the younger generation for that. I've seen
No.
I've seen this illusion of efficiency versus effectiveness across all generations. I'll tell you what I dislike even more, if I can build on that, is people who send me an email trying to sell me something and then ask me to book time in their diary in the email.
Yeah, that would really annoy me.
which bit of this
Yes.
is you actually doing anything?
Any of the work, exactly. Yes. And by the way, they've not recorded it in CRM either.
No.
Yeah.
But if I want to deal with buying things like that, I'll go to Amazon, because it's just easier if I'm in that kind of transactional market.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, emailing is my biggest pet hate. When used in the wrong way, obviously it has its place. I think there's just a fatigue, isn't there, around the emails being used inappropriately and almost as a chat box now, and this whole thing around copying everybody in because everyone needs to be copied. No, there has to be an email etiquette, and people need to adhere to it and understand it and just be part of it, because it affects all of us, not just in the work scenario but in our everyday lives at home as well. So
maybe we could wish for less email, more conversation.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that. More conversation, and deep and meaningful conversation as well, because we build relationships with our customers through getting to know them, and what's important to them, and what makes them tick, and but let's also get to the point of why we're there, and come out with an advance of that sale in terms of what are the next steps, rather than, oh, we had a really nice chat and a coffee, but actually nothing really happened. So these customers are very busy, and they're they on the whole have got very important jobs to do looking after patients. So we need to make sure that when we do access them, we're accessing them for the right reason for them, as well as for the supplier and the organization that's supporting them, and we're not time wasters. So I don't think we are in Draeger at all, but it's something that you observe over the 25-year span of being in this industry. We don't have time to waste customers' time or our time. So that wasn't another one that I've added to the list in the pet in terms of the pet hate, but yeah, we expanded on why it's important to have that face-to-face time.
Perfect. Victoria, look, thank you so much for giving us so much of your precious time. I've really enjoyed our chat. It's been really insightful.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed learning a bit about your journey over the last couple of years and what you've learned during that. So yeah, have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you, Steve, and you as well. Thank you so much.
Hello, if today's conversation has resonated with you in any way and it's provoked some thought or comments, then please do comment. We'd love you to subscribe as well to our YouTube channel so that you can get updates when we have more of these conversations with other sales leaders. And of course, if you would like to contact me directly, you can do at steve.bussey@salestrong.co.uk. Thank you. Look forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye.